a playlist original.
Her friends betrayed her and left her for dead.
Well, I wasn't.
On April 16th,
I've killed a hell of a lot of people to get to this point.
the bride is back
I'm the deadliest woman in the world.
and has taken a solemn vow.
I am gonna kill Bill. You and I have unfinished business.
You ain't kidding. Rated R in theaters April 16th. On April.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. Today, diving into Kill Bill Volume 2, depending on who you ask, the fifth movie by Quentin Tarantino, the man, the myth, the legend. And we're celebrating its 20th anniversary, which was April 16th, came out in 2004. And I think, Gaius, we mentioned this kind of off camera just before we got rolling here, that it had been quite some time since either of us had watched this movie. So interested to get your thoughts in about this one. I don't even know if I really have prepared what I'm going to say about it yet. I'm kind of going to be rolling on the fly today. So your guess is as good as mine what I'm going to say about it, but I want to hear your thoughts too. If maybe you could tell us when the last time you had seen it was, and maybe you get a little bit, maybe of a stack up or how it stacks up in your Tarantino list. That's really what everyone wants to hear, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it had been a few years, I think 5 or more since I watched it. So it's been a bit. And then like to go back, I did see this in theaters when it came out on opening night. And we were all very excited to kind of see how this was gonna wrap up because we were, like Kill Bill Volume 1 ends on that kind of that note of like about the whole thing with the baby being like all that right. And it ends on a very good stinger where you're like, well, I want more now. And I think this came out 6 months after Kill Bill opened. And you know what, I still, I mean, even from watching it for this, I at least right now I like it more than Volume 1,
really,
as a film. I mean, I think because like I love Quentin Tarantino dialogue, and this is definitely more story dialogue driven than Volume 1 is.
Yeah,
it's not as much action, and I remember that being like kind of an issue with some of my friends when we saw it. It definitely tones down the action a bit, and it's more like the sparring between her and Bill in this one. It's a verbal sparring, pretty much. It's like them kind of more going at each other with words rather than full on what you're expecting, I guess. And I was fine with that. Because I thought the dialogue between those two characters, especially when she finally encounters them again and they come face to face again, there's so much good like back and forth going on between the two of them. So I was really into that. Now I will say this: I was thrown off then, and I was thrown off again now. I still can't imagine at one point that this was going to be like one long movie because it feels it feels so tonally different from Volume 1. Like just like the look of it, the feeling, like everything. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it would be like one cohesive movie. But I don't know. I appreciate it. I don't know, like just two very complex characters, kind of. Just having it out kind of like that. And like, I love like the last, like 20 or so minutes of the movie where it's just, them
the
talking.
highlight of the movie for me is their conversations towards the end when they finally meet. Honestly, I wasn't really that into it on this watch until about the time when the bride meets with, right after Daryl Hannah's character, Elle Driver, kind of pulls that stunt on Michael Madsen's character, and then bride shows up. Then I was like, really, this felt like, I know the whole thing does have Tarantino's like signature on it, but to me, in his 8 or 9 movies, it feels like almost like the one that's most detached from his usual directing style. And at that scene, their big fight there is kind of when I felt like, okay, this is Tarantino being Tarantino again. And I don't know what it was. Like, it just, I had remembered my watch of this movie, a lot of the stuff that I watched today, because I just went to watching today, we both did, felt familiar upon rewatch, even though it had been several years too since I'd seen it. And I guess after watching it today, I kind of just realized maybe why I had let so much time go by in between this watch, because to me, it's just it didn't really like satisfy me the way that most of his movies do. And that's not to say I didn't like it because I love all of his work, but
Right.
to me, I guess it just to me it pales in comparison to part one. I think I'm guilty of like loving all the relentless action and gore and over the topness of the first part, but I can appreciate that it's different too. But you're totally right. I felt like if this was one big mashup 4-hour film, it would be like completely different. It would be night and day, different tones halfway through. So I think it works best as a 2-parter. But it's funny to see how he clearly envisioned it being a 1-part, especially like in the credits of this movie. Like you have characters and they get their moment on the screen with their name and the actor playing them that weren't even featured in part 2. So you could see that he clearly styled this as like exactly.
Yeah. So I guess it's safe to say that you did not like it as much as Volume 1.
Well, I'd say like it didn't hold up quite like I'd hoped it would, but that's not to say I didn't like the movie. And we'll get into it. There's lots that I did. There is some great dialogue that I have written down that I'm excited to chew on a little bit together. But overall, I guess I would say like I don't want to go and like use the D word, you know what I mean? But I guess I just wasn't like ecstatic about the rewatch like I kind of hoped I would be, and I'll save the thoughts for later how I rank it, but there's lots of Tarantino movies I like more. I'll put it that way.
All right.
For those listening, forgive me too. I'm kind of battling some allergies right now, so I might have some extra sniffling going on. Gaius saw my sneezing fit I was going through, so yeah, apologies for that. But I am battling seasonal allergies at the moment. But bear with me.
He's being a trooper guy, so bear with him.
Yeah.
What I appreciated too. I even love the kind of like where we kind of go back and we have that flashback to the rehearsal of her getting for her wedding or whatever.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you because again, I do love that like you can tell just from like the dialogue exchange where she sees him out there that they are just very complex people, and there's like this and there is this kind of like he loves her, but there's this whole betrayal thing.
Yes, that he can't shake.
And I think that she has feelings for him too, but she's also like, I had to get away from that life to have a seemingly normal life. Right. So there's all these like complex, like conflicting emotions for the two of them.
Yes.
Which I think is interesting. And I want to ask you, I was wondering, do you think, because like when I was watching it for this, I was like, does she have an idea in her mind that he came there and was going to do something to her, or does she not see that coming? And I was like trying to like when I was watching it, I was like, I couldn't
tell, right?
yeah, I couldn't tell this time. Yeah, if she genuinely was like, he's coming here to say his piece, and that's it, or she's like, in the back of her mind, like something is going to happen, and I really couldn't tell that this time.
I agree with you that I couldn't tell, but like to answer the question in my heart of hearts, if I'm gotta decide one way or another, if I thought she could tell something was going to happen, or if she was naive and thought that he was there to actually support her.
Yeah,
it all comes down to she has a line of dialogue after the rest of the divas, her old former assassin teammates kind of walk into the church. There's that great single like long take out of the church, and they're walking in. It's her line when they are in there and they brandish their rifles, and you don't see any characters in this scene or in this moment, but you can assume that she turns and sees them, and she screams, "Bill, no!" And it's how she delivers that line. And again, we don't even see her deliver it; we just hear it outside the church. That to me sounds like it was unexpected. Like she really thought she was going to get away with it, and that he had found her, but he didn't kind of walk in guns blazing at first. I feel like that kind of made her let her guard down. So I suppose to answer out, I felt, and I agree with you, I wasn't sure what she really thought, but I think that if I had to answer, that she was kind of taken off guard.
I can definitely see that, because like it does seem like when they're talking that like, and like it's so cool because like it's just their rapport with each other. They're like back and forth. It's kind of uneasy, and then it kind of gets nice, and then you're kind of like a little bit at ease too, because it seems like all right, nothing is going to happen. I mean, of course you know it's going to happen because you saw the volume 1, but like it's something about how pleasant the conversation becomes. And even when like she takes him in there and says that he's her father to the guy she's about to marry,
weird.
Yeah, that, and I love the pause and him kind of like, like that's weird. But yeah, there is something about, even if like the way that she plays it, it does feel like maybe she wasn't expecting it, and that maybe she thought like, hey, maybe he was just coming to see her off like this one last time. But then I'm thinking like she knows him as a person though, and like she would like he wouldn't think too kindly of that kind of betrayal and leaving,
right?
And all that. But there's also he has complex feelings about her too. So I guess there's like that's a whole mashup of stuff going on in that scene. And that's actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I love when it pans out and you see them walk in. I love that you don't see what happens inside of there. Like, it's so much more powerful that you only hear it rather than like seeing it. And like, it sounds more brutal and tragic. And like, I think that the way they handled that whole opening and,
was pretty sweet.
That was really good. Yeah. I thought that was handled really well. But yeah, I mean, I just love the back and forth between them, because it's like, yeah, you go from being like, oh, this is not good for her, and then you're like, well, no, it seems nice. I think he's gonna be all right. What's still on the bright side, so he's good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which again lends to that. I think it must have been intentionally ambiguous. How? Yeah. Like, obviously, as an audience member, we know, having seen part one, what happens in the church, but there's almost, if you can let yourself be a little naive, you kind of think, just because of the nature of their conversation, that maybe he's going to let it slide, because like you said, like, just the conversation ends up sort of being somewhat friendly, and the bride doesn't seem to think that anything bad is going to happen, or at least she tries to play it cool. Like, it's not like, maybe she'll get lucky. But to me though, what I love about the scene is that, and I would have loved to have seen this in theaters, like having seen the part one just a few months before, this is the scene that where we finally see Bill in all his glory. We finally see David Carradine in full form, because we only get to hear his voice and see like his sort of like silhouette, like not as full. Yeah, exactly. In part one. So we finally, when she comes out onto the balcony of the church and he's sitting there playing his flute, it's like a great villain reveal, I suppose, like something out of like a Bond movie. And I really love that scene. Yeah, I do too. And it's also interesting too, because I think there's so much like nuance in the way when they're talking with each other. Like, when she like tells him that like she is, what he's like, what do you do for like a job now? And she says, oh, I work at a record store. And like, I read into that more, that like, this is not something that she necessarily wants to be doing. Like, I mean, she went away from them because like, yeah, she wanted to have like some kind of normal life, and that's the only way that she could. But in the dialogue and her talking to him, it's almost like you can tell like she misses at least the excitement of that old life, and she does not really want to be some girl that's like working at a record store, exactly. It's like a lion being in the zoo, right? Right. Yeah. And like, and I think you can even tell the way when he's talking to her that he knows that too. Like, she's not perfectly content with her her normal life now. So that's why I think a lot of the reason why I like Volume 2, because there's a lot of that going on, and there's so much more layers to people's conversations, especially theirs. And it's also it comes down to like the writing being really good, and also just two really good actors like just kind of riffing off each other, and there's just so much more going on than like probably what's on the page. I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm glad you say that, because although they're saying lots to each other in the scene, they do a great job at leaving a lot to the imagination. We can tell that based on their conversation, that there's so much history behind these characters that we will never see on screen that comes across in their conversation. So you're totally right by saying that. Yeah, and there's even something like in his vibe when he meets the husband, like you can just kind of tell that he's like, who is this goober? Like, who is she? Like, this is not the guy that she wants. This is the guy. Yeah, this is not a guy she wants to, marry. But yeah, I think I love that they take you back to that moment though, that like, you can say like see that kind of build up and like what and it's interesting because you already know what's going to happen. Like, of course you saw a hint of that in the first one, but like, again, the dialogue kind of makes you at ease a little bit, because it turns into something that feels pleasant, and you're kind of like caught off guard. You're like, oh yeah, this does happen. Like, this doesn't end well at all. But yeah, it's really well done and well written, I think, and acted. Love that it's shot in black and white too. Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, I thought that was super great choice.
Were you kind of so what was like, I guess compared to like the first time you saw it, I guess now, were you like again still kind of like, is it jarring to you that it's such a drastically different movie in tone? Like right away you're kind of like, oh, this is nothing like what we got before. And does that take you out of it, or are you fine with
No, I'm fine with the change. I think it's I think it's just because like narratively she does a bulk of her killing, and like the list that she's after to cross off, she just completes in the first volume. So naturally, she's only a couple characters that she's really after to settle the score with. And I guess I think I don't feel like the movie feels like it's long, but just by nature of her, she only has Bill, L Driver, and Bud to cross off her list in this movie. I feel like for those three characters, we do have a lot of screen time. So it's 2 hours, 16-ish, give or take, movie for those three characters. Basically, are the three tasks she's looking to complete. And we get like, I don't know how many chapters the movie's broken up into. It's like 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be like an hour 45, 2 hour movie. Just because it's so much smaller. It's like it's really like the second or the third of 3 parts, really, of the 2 movies. I feel like the first 2/3 are all covered in volume 1. So I feel like it does go a little long for like what we're actually seeing, but Tarantino paces it so great that it doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome or anything. Yeah, I don't know if you agree, or again, to answer your question, I it's not the lack of action or it not being an action focused narrative in the second part that throws me off. I think it's just that I don't know if I can even really pinpoint it, but I'm assuming you're okay with the change of sort of like genre.
I'm fine with the change. I will say, like, even though I enjoyed the movie, it does at points feel long. And I think where I've, interestingly enough, felt like the length a little bit is when she goes after Bud, and then there's a whole like buried alive thing and all that going on. And that goes on really long. Yeah. Now it is like, it's done really well. It's a very different, it's a very claustrophobic. It's like well done, like all of that. But it does feel like it like slows the movie down, like where it's like, oh, like I feel the length here, like at this point. But I mean, it's not a total detriment, but I definitely can feel like it could have like, and I don't know how Tarantino, how he feels about trimming any of his movies, but it felt like something could have like maybe it doesn't really need to be like 2 hours and 17 minutes. It feels like it could be a bit shorter. And what I was also kind of throw with, and not in a necessarily in a bad way, like there's something so big about volume 1, just the action set pieces are bigger, like all the stuff with the crazy 88s, all that stuff is bigger, right? Yeah. And then in this one, the two like the L big fight with L is like inside of like a trailer, so like it's just all like smaller and like not as big. And I was still trying to figure out, I wonder, like, do I think that's like necessarily a bad thing? It just it makes it feel like a completely different movie from what we got the first time, that the action sequences here are a bit like, smaller, confined, not as elaborate. Yeah. I really would have liked to have seen in another life if he had done this movie a little bit differently. And we're even teased this in the dialogue when Bill goes to visit Bud, who I forgot that the characters are brothers. I don't even know if that's covered. I forgot too. I was like, oh, all right, there we go. Yeah, I totally forgot that. Near the beginning, when Bill goes to visit Bud, and he's kind of warning him that the bride is coming for him. Yeah. Bud says something to the degree of like, oh, if she wants to fight me, all she has to do is come to the bar that I bounce at, start some shit, and then we'll fight. And I wish that is how it played out, but she doesn't even really get to, her hands on Bud. Elle beats her to it. But I think that would have been a really cool action set pieces at the bar that he bounces at, because it's like nice, and we do get a scene inside of it where he kind of just gets grilled by his boss. Yeah. Again, could be cut, doesn't really add anything, but it really doesn't. The fluorescent lights and stuff in the bar would have made for a really wicked scene, I think. But you're right, doesn't do anything to drive the plot forward. We could completely have done without that. I also think it's interesting that she's very what we've seen is very smart and tactical, right? I thought it was very interesting that she wasn't really seemed like she wasn't expecting him to get the jump on her,
Right.
and like
Yeah.
that kind of threw me off a little bit just based on what we know about her. Like, because to me of all of them, he seems like the least like of a threat, a viable threat compared to like everyone else.
Exactly.
And like I would think her character would like kind of maybe expect like if he had to like try to take her out, it wouldn't be in like a very slick kind of way. It would kind of be
It would be by
sneaky,
surprise. Yeah,
by
exactly.
surprise. So
Yeah.
I was a little thrown that she doesn't expect that, or that, like, you know, she's taken, you know, I guess there would be more enough conflict if he didn't, you know.
Exactly. I guess she was definitely on a roll at that point in the series where she has kind of been taking out everyone with relative ease and hasn't really met any resistance. And then of course it happens to come at the hands of Bud that she lets her guard down and gets overwhelmed. And if he was a more efficient killer, she really would have died at his hand if he had decided just to shoot her in the head instead of try to bury her alive and give her a chance to escape. It's just kind of like, I wonder if it's kind of Tarantino like recognizing that and trying to like play on the tropes, because the movie very much like where Volume 1 is very much like a samurai sort of inspired genre movie. This one feels more like a Western, and I'm wondering if like that's all intentional. I'm sure he said so somewhere, but having not watched any interviews of him talk about the Kill Bills, I don't really know, but feels like something you would have seen out of like a 60s Western, like where the villain, you know, or like a Bond movie where the villain tries to devise some cruel, evil trap to kill the hero and they end up, you know, just escaping it. But in reality, they probably would have just finished her off at the scene. Also, if I wasn't paying attention, I almost very much missed this. I was kind of wondering how she survived a point blank shotgun blast to the chest. But I think he mentioned something about shooting her with what does he say that he used, like salt?
Like something like salt. Yeah. So that's what he shoots her with. So
again,
like, you know,
curious why he doesn't just use a regular shotgun shell.
Why he doesn't just like shoot her and kill her and take her out?
Why all the elaborate, you know,
burying her alive, burying her. Yeah.
But it makes for a cool sequence of her escaping That was one of the things I remember most poignantly from, you know, my first watch of it years ago was her being buried alive and clawing through the dirt. I don't know if I mentioned, but this is only the second time I've ever seen Volume 2, and by far my viewed Tarantino movie. I think I've seen every other movie of his at least 3 times or more, except for this one. Yeah.
Nice. Have you seen Death Proof more than a few times?
Yeah, I've seen Death Proof 3 times. I've seen Jackie Brown 3 times. Those would be the next 2 like least, and all of his other movies I've seen like several times.
I still maintain that Death Proof is so underrated. I know like a lot of people
don't. Oh man, I agree.
Especially like because, you know, Planet Terror in that grindhouse is like it's fun, and like it is more fun. And again, the Tarantino movie is the more dialogue driven one, and I love that's what I love about Death Proof, that there's so much good dialogue, and Kurt Russell, you know, nails that part completely.
Steals the show. Actually, before we sat down to record this, I watched his scene where he is talking to, I can't remember her name, Butterfly. I can't remember the actress's name. Where he pulls out his book. That scene, that 4-minute sequence where he's calling her chicken shit for not giving her the lap dance. I watched that scene just because I was thinking about Death Proof, and I really wanted just to see a scene that would scratch my Tarantino itch. And Death Proof is so good, man. You're right. So underrated. I don't think it has that unfair moniker of being Tarantino's worst film, movie, quote unquote. I don't think so. Especially not after watching this. I don't say he has a worst movie, just, you know, a movie that I think is like my least favorite, I guess is a better way of putting it, but it's not Death Proof.
Yeah. How do you feel about because she doesn't get to take Bud out, it's Elle that does it. And like does that cheapen it for you that she doesn't get to do it, or do we need to show kind of how like much of a snake Elle is and like what she's willing to do to kind of, you know, how do you feel about that?
I suppose it would like kind of keep in line with her being on a hunt to take out everyone that betrayed her, and Bud was, you know, part of the squad that shot her up at her wedding. I like that we get it kind of, you know, her Elle taking out Bud definitely lends so that she's kind of like more of like a central villain. But I guess I feel like the kill really belongs to the bride or Beatrix, whatever. I don't know if people really know her name yet, or for those that haven't seen the, you know, but I'm okay with it. Like it gives another reason for us to kind of root against Elle and just to see that how evil the character she is. But Bud is one of the few characters that the bride doesn't say that she has unfinished business with, and I feel like that kind of sweetens it for me because I think everyone on the list that she has, she says that they have unfinished business except for him, and there might be one other that she doesn't end up killing. I can't remember,
I also thought it was interesting too, and I guess it makes sense for this movie because like the end goal is Bill. Like we want her to get to that, right?
Right.
But I will say I think that like her going through like Renita Green and Oriishi in like the first one, like those characters, I will say I think feel more even in one scene for Vivica Fox feels more like defined than some of the than Bud or Elle in this one.
Agreed.
Where like there's more like there seems like there's I don't necessarily say more at stake, but like I feel like you learn more about the other people that she goes through in volume 1 compared to who's left here. But I guess like the end game is just to get to Bill, and maybe that's why they're not as in like important or fleshed out here. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Like again, like nothing I viewed as something that was bad, but it was something that I just noticed that like they're not as developed compared to
developed exactly. Bud, we don't really know much about. He honestly just feels like kind of like the Nepo member of the group, where he's just pretty like Bill's brother, and that's why he's in the squad, and we don't really see why. Like he's kind of just like a washed up hitman. Like doesn't really get to show why he was so deadly. We don't get any backstory to him. I just don't really. I guess he's kind of like the odd one out of the group, but I guess that kind of is fitting that she doesn't get to kill him. But
yeah, and I guess like with Elle, you got a sense in volume 1 because she only has like the one scene basically, but she has this kind of affection for Bill too, and there's this jealousy between her and Beatrix, right? So like there is that, and we've already established like what her issue is with her in particular. But yeah, I kind of like you have a whole like big backstory for Orinishi in volume 1. There's like that whole like kind of anime like sequence that you get this like elaborate thing about her, and there's not really a lot of that for the remaining.
I feel like if we got a little bit more of that in this movie, it would kind of like justify that longer runtime for less characters. But he doesn't. The Gone is that's the various different genre blending that he throws in, like in volume 1. He pretty much just keeps like a straight narrative. There's a flashback sequence, I guess, when she's in China learning under I can't remember his name.
But it's Pai
Mei, yeah, exactly.
Pai Mei, yeah.
But I think it would have been a cool. I guess we do get some traditional like Chinese kung fu sequences, which are kind of cool.
And all that stuff is really cool. I mean, again, it feels like it does add up to the runtime, but it is a cool sequence to watch that. The stuff that he shows her and what she learns, and then I love every good movie has a good callback, so she learns the whole 5-point palm thing. And, uses it to kind of get out of her coffin, and then of course uses that again later too. So I did love like at least there's a payoff to that sequence and doesn't necessarily feel like it's filler. Like I think it has to be to show like what she's going to learn to use later, but still well done. And it's the only I think sequence that feels like it could have been in volume 1. Like it feels like it could have easily been in there, and like that's the one that makes it feels like there is some kind of visual connective tissue a little bit.
Right.
Is that sequence, but yeah. It's funny the way I'm talking about it might sound like I maybe didn't like it. I really did. But it was just like all these little things that just kind of noticed.
Yeah, I think it's a great sequence that breaks up the movie and kind of brings us out of just the bride's revenge quest, and it kind of ties us into the wider world of the assassin, group that she's a part of, and how they all had this special training. And I think it's cool too how it ties into Daryl Hannah's character too, that she had trained under him too, and was sort of like the rejected student, the brat that got her eye plucked out under his tutelage. And
I thought it was hilarious.
Awesome. And how the bride is really just kind of like the favorite, and Bill's, the eye of Bill's affection, and the good student, and like that adds to their dynamic a lot too. And I love how right before they fight too, Elle says that she had killed him too, killed her master,
Oh, by
if you will.
poisoning, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then leading up to that, my favorite sequence I think of the movie is the fight between Elle Driver and the bride. It's so great.
Yeah, I will say, even though it's a smaller, confined fight sequence compared to what is in Volume 1, it is something appealing about it that's just is so like not as elaborate that they were able to do what they did,
right.
And like that
the
kind of tight,
choreography
confined
is
space. And
exactly
yeah,
awesome.
and I love that it's more of like a thrashing than a full on like it feels like a less like choreographed kind of fight, and then almost like kind of like these are the circumstances that we're in, this is the space we're in, and we have to do what we have to do in this space.
A lot more
so
improv.
I do love that part about it. Yeah, I do love that part of it, and I do love her getting her other eye plucked out. And I mean, and Daryl Hannah, to her credit, just to watch her like thrash around after that happens. And just, I was like dying, like laughing out loud. Like, I forgot how funny it was.
She sells that scene so well. And apparently it was all her idea too. She wanted to do it that way to get a laugh out of Quentin Tarantino. And supposedly it worked. And he went with that take of her, you know, having, you know, the freak out to end all freakouts after she gets that second eye plucked out. But just think, again, this is along with the scene with the bride being buried alive. It was Elle thrashing around in the trailer blind that stuck out to me from this rewatch, like that one of the scenes I was anticipating the most because of how terrifying it is, especially when you think that she's now trapped in this trailer with no eyes and there's a fucking super poison or venomous snake somewhere in there, and you can assume that even though we don't see her die on screen, we can assume that she's going to stumble upon that thing sooner or later. That is a fate worse than death, if you ask me.
And I honestly think that makes that moment more powerful, that you don't see what happens there, like what is implied, like that is probably what is going to happen to her.
Exactly.
Like,
I think
you know, and very fitting that snake would take that snake would take her out. So like that is, but yeah, the fact that like you would have like no sight and this thing, because I hate snakes.
I hate snakes too. My second worst fear behind spiders. I will take snakes over spiders, but I do not like them at all. Especially venomous ones.
So the thing that, like, you know, if you had like no sight, there's nothing, you don't see that coming, that makes it more completely terrifying. But it is a really fun, it is a fun sequence, even though it's not as like elaborate as what we see in Volume 1. It kind of seems like that would be the kind of fight they would have, so it makes sense, like character wise. It seems like it makes sense for them to have that kind of brawl, I guess.
Definitely. Also, we don't really see much of Daryl Hannah's work with like swords play. I don't think we see Elle Driver really wield a sword much in the series, so it feels like that wouldn't really be how they would kind of take each other down as like in a knife fight. It's more of like they have so much rage and hatred amongst each other as characters that they take it out mostly with like the fists and throwing each other around. I think it's more of like a bare knuckle brawl sort of fight between them, and I kind of like that it was choreographed that way.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense for those to have it out like that.
Also, I'd be remiss without mentioning, just while we're on this scene, that my favorite line of dialogue from maybe even both parts is delivered in this scene when I don't remember what Elle Driver says to the bride. She says something about her future, and then the bride responds with, "Bitch, you have no future." That line is so cold. It was delivered so great by Uma Thurman. It was like, I had to write it down. I was like, I gotta bring that up. That was so badass.
It also sounds like something you just hear on the streets. Like it doesn't sound like like an elegant like dialogue. Like that was from like the chess.
Exactly.
So that's what makes that it's hilarious.
So badass
and Uma Thurman does deliver that perfectly. And you know, we talked about when we talked about Volume 1, when we deep dived it, we talked about how good she was. She is great throughout both movies, and I mean, this is of course a role that like he wrote for her. Like he wanted her to, you know, to do this, and so much so that when she got pregnant, he like held off on it, so she could do it after she had her baby. Just watching like the evolution from Volume 1 through this, like she is doing so much heavy lifting, performance wise, and she nails every single moment that she has. Like you could just tell, like she was happy that this part was written for her. She wanted to like probably, you know, please Tarantino, who like wrote this part for her, and like how dedicated she was to it. I that's what I gathered from like when we did volume 1, and even watching this one, it was like, you know, she completely owns that role.
Well, it helps too. I think that she helped create the character too, right? Like her and Quentin Tarantino came up with the character of the bride, so it feels very personal to her, and I feel that comes through in her performance a lot. Like this is kind of like a character that, you know, she envisioned from the ground up, and happened to have done so with, you know, one of the great, you know, screenplay writers working at the time, and even today still. And you know, definitely would have helped her flesh it out and give her some awesome lines to recite, but. Yeah, just you're right. Great. I don't know who else would have played the bride at this time, because it really.
I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine anyone else doing it. Like if she is very much like that role is in her DNA. I think
exactly.
And like you said, like, you know, she helped develop it, and that probably has a lot to do with how, you know, connected she feels to it. Like, you know,
exactly.
There are certain performances that transcend like acting. And like, like I said, where it feels like you're not watching an actress play a character, like they become the character. And I think for a while, like after I saw these two movies, it was hard for me to like see her in other stuff, because it felt like she was so like, this was so ingrained in her, like this role. Like when I would see some of her afterwards, I'm like, oh, like it was hard to imagine her like being different in something else. So yeah,
exactly.
That's how much she nails it, I think.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about watching a Tarantino movie, because I don't know if we've definitely covered him before on the channel, but for a long time, he's been one of my favorite filmmakers. And so one thing that I love while watching any of his movies are the various Easter eggs he leaves in his own movies from sort of his own cinematic universe, if you will. So for the diehard Tarantino fans out there that maybe don't know, there's some really cool callbacks to some other Tarantino movies in Kill Bill Volume 2, big one too, and I'd be curious to know if you've known this too. I mean, if you've read through the IMDb trivia page on Kill Bill Volume 2, then you'll know. But the grave that the bride is buried alive under is the grave of Paula Schultz, and there's a date range of her birth and death date on it, which I didn't actually write down, but supposedly that is the wife of Dr. King Schultz from Django Unchained, which is pretty cool. That's awesome. How she ends up to be buried in Texas, the United States, I don't know. But I thought that was a pretty cool callback. And then, of course, his famous Red Apple cigarettes that are, I think, present in almost every one of his movies, a fictional brand of tobacco in the Tarantino verse that's featured, too, in the scene where she's talking to the 80-year-old pimp, I guess, down in Mexico. I can't remember his name either, but he's clutching a pack of red apples. Esteban, yes, exactly. And what else do we get? Oh, there's a great, more of like a dialogue reference, and it might not even be a reference because it works so well in the context of the conversation, but perhaps a nod to another Tarantino work. There's a scene near the end, actually in the scene when Bill is talking to the bride, when they're kind of have the calm before the storm, before their battle, their titular fight. He's commenting on how if she were to gonna go through with her life that she had tried to run away from and live in El Paso with her husband, the record store owner, how she was kind of like running from her true nature. And he said that when she was born a natural born killer, which is kind of a callback.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
exactly. Tarantino had written the screenplay for the '94 movie directed by Oliver Stone, Natural Born Killer. So I didn't remember that line of dialogue until I had heard it again watching it today, and I was like, oh, that was pretty slick. Again, it's one of those things, like, I don't know if that's Tarantino shouting himself out or if it's just like, you know, it works in the context of their banter. So I don't know. It's hard to say, but thought it'd be funny to mention anyway.
Well, he's such like a cinephile movie nerd that I would think that he would drop that stuff in there for other cinephile movie nerds to catch. So like it seems like it's something he would do like on purpose. But and that's what makes him such a good filmmaker too, is that he also, you know, feels like he's like a walking encyclopedia of like movie knowledge. Like,
exactly.
That goes into like him being such a good filmmaker. And you know, it is interesting that you kind of said it a little bit earlier, like that we've talked about him on the channel before, but across what we at 166 episodes so far, only covered 2 of his movies on the show, which would be
And it's Kill Bill
Volume
1 and 2?
And I can't
How is
believe
that the case?
I can't believe I've never covered any of his other movies, and that just makes me think that we should probably do that more at some point.
Well, next year, The Hateful Eight turns 10 in 2025, so that could be something to look forward to. What are some other anniversaries of his? Oh, wouldn't Inglourious Bastards have 15 years sometime this year?
I actually is. I think I actually wrote it down. It's in August, I think.
Oh, it's in August. Okay. I mean,
yeah.
Sign me up to. I love any chance I can to watch that movie. So
there we go. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like,
you're right though. How are these the first?
I know for like
episodes we've dedicated.
Like we only had 2 movies, and they're both Kill Bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you? So I know I mentioned that. What I appreciated about the film, and actually other than that opening, like just favorite, I guess, sequence of scenes is this whole like they finally she finds him and they have this long like elaborate complex conversation. And, of course he gives her like the truth serum and all that stuff to like pull the stuff out of her. Were you, when you first saw it, if you can think back to when you first saw it, were you hoping for a big kind of knockdown, drag out fight between the 2 of them, or did you kind of look at this like it feels like it would make sense that it happens this way more than like a big epic brawl?
So you in asking that question, you pretty much have answered how I would have wanted or what I thought about it going down. So when they're actually talking about what they're going to do, where this is all headed, and how they're going to duke it out, he pitches this awesome, what would have made for an incredible scene, no doubt, if it had been filmed, but of them walking down to the beach at his hacienda under the moonlight and having a sword fight, both with Hattori Hanzo's swords. That would have been so awesome to have seen. But I do like how it goes down, that it's kind of just a brief little skirmish. They don't even really get to really draw their swords on each other before she kind of does the 5. I don't even know the name of the
5-point palm.
5-point palm. Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Yeah.
And I feel like
it's
that.
It's a little wordy for sure.
Exactly. I tried to memorize it before, but I knew that I wouldn't. I didn't write it down, or I should have. But I feel like how it goes down, how she gets him with that. It's super fitting that she gets him with that move. Great callback.
Yeah,
I think it would have been cooler if that was mentioned in Volume 1 and then kind of not mentioned again.
Carried over.
Then, would have been cool. But still works great. It's mentioned early enough in Volume 2 that it's a good callback. But I feel like their fight I don't feel like Bill would have had it in him to really duke it out and actually try and like kill her in a sword fight. Like it's impressive enough for him. Maybe impressive is not the right word, but he even admits too that after he shot her in the church and thought that he'd killed her, he had mourned her and like really regretted it, felt sad about it. And I don't think he would have had it in him again to really try and kill her. And so I feel like the fight actually goes down and she overpowers him relatively quickly is more fitting. Like it's her story. It's her revenge. She doesn't really have the stake anymore. Like he already regrets putting her down. And I don't feel like he would have really tried to have killed her. So even though as awesome as it would have seemed as them fight under the moonlight, I guess we do see her fight, have a sword fight under the moonlight in Volume 1. So that kind of softens it. But I like how he goes out and she, when he asks how he looks and she goes, "You look ready." And then he kind of takes the 5 steps. Yeah. I think it just goes down really, really cool. But what did you think? Was there were you expecting different or?
So I think 20 years ago, Gaius was like expecting like a big fight. I mean, it feels like it was building to that, right? But even watching it now and then remembering watching it in theaters when I first saw it, just because Tarantino's dialogue is so good, I was all for this kind of is one, because their relationship, like I said earlier, is so complex. Like when he mentions like how like he mourned her when he thought he killed her, and like you believe it. Like there's still this connection between the 2 of them where I don't think he's saying these things as like a manipulation. Like this is he had very like complex feelings about what he did to her because he did care about her. And I think it's interesting too that even through this whole like this bloody revenge trail that she's been going on, it seems like she, in her own way, cares about him too. Like there's still like some kind of like there's still a connection there, and that's what I like appreciated about them kind of having more of like a verbal sparring match before, rather than like a big fight, because they're just so very interesting as characters. And the one thing that I thought that maybe he did do as a manipulation, I mean, maybe not, because she tracks him down and she, this is gonna be it. She's ready, and then of course she doesn't know about the daughter, and then also Uma Thurman in that moment, like just it's all in her face, but like she's so good when she sees her. And like you can just tell there's this happiness, confusion, broken, like there's a lot going on in that moment. Yeah. But I remember when I first saw my friend, I was like, homie just did that on purpose, just to, like fuck with her, like, hey, see, like, she's lying. But even I don't think that was like a full on manipulation. Like, of course, he had to think like, all right, she's gone through all these people, she's gonna come, she's gonna find me, and but what might soften the blow is if she realizes that her kid's alive, and he's been taking good care of her. So there's that, and that's another interesting thing too. Like he's a good dad. Like on top, I mean, it seems like a good dad. Like it's so like there's so many layers to like their history, and and that's why I at the end I appreciate it. I think I appreciate it more now because 20 years ago I probably would have loved to have seen like a fight. That would have been like, oh, that'd been awesome because we feel like we were building to that. But I don't know, like it's so much more interesting, I think, to have them kind of have it because they need to have this talk, right? This kind of like this having out, like why did you leave? Like this kind of like this whole back and forth where they both need to like hash out like what kind of happened between them, why she left, why he did what he did, and like and I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Also, like just his monologuing in this scene, like David Carradine's voice is so great to listen to. I feel like I could listen to it like half an hour. Butter. Him and his brother Keith Carradine too, who plays Detective Lundy in a few seasons of Dexter. Like they both have these. They look very similar as well, but they both have these very powerful voices that you could just listen to narrate anything, speak, monologue just for hours. It feels. So I just couldn't get enough of him kind of going off and talking to her.
Yeah, and like it's interesting too, because like we mentioned Uma Thurman, but like and Tarantino is known for doing this, like kind of plucking out people who haven't done stuff in a really long time. And giving them these roles that like it kind of redefines them for like a new generation of people who are discovering them. And he did that with him. I mean, he hadn't done a lot of stuff in like a bit. It'd been a while since he had really been like in the limelight as a star, and this was a really good showcase of his talent. And like he handles that like the monologue stuff is so good. I mean, to be able to handle Tarantino dialogue is probably a feat in itself.
Easier said than done, for
but
sure.
It really is. I know. I mean, it is really cool to like kind of see like Tarantino, because he loves old Hollywood and loves being like, I remember this person like when I was growing up, and it's been so long. Like he did that with Pam Grier, with Jackie Brown. There's a lot of that he's like, I want to see this person like do something really cool again, and I want to, I love that he does that. And it pays off.
It the Western, that show that he starred in? Do you think that like
I know he was on Kung Fu back in the day, and that's one of the shows that Tarantino grew up watching. So I'm assuming that would have been like one of the main things. Like, okay, I definitely want him to be Bill, and that's why the casting was so perfect. And I also love too that like in Volume 1 we only get like his voice in silhouette. I love that we don't see him in Volume 1.
I know. I think it's super cool too.
And then it makes like the reveal of him in that opening scene when you do fully kind of see him. It's right away that you can tell that he is going to command the screen when he's on. Yes. And he's a charismatic, like you kind of fear him because you're like, you've seen what he can do, but he's also charming as fuck too. Like there's like very, very charismatic. Well. Yes. So like I said, it's a very complex villain. And I love when like villains aren't just like bad guys. Like there's more like going on there, and there's a lot going on.
Exactly.
Psychologically there.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I think props to Tarantino's a director where he is really able to bring out the best and the most of actors, especially like you said, ones that he's sort of like helping rejuvenate their career. And I think some of his finest work is with David Carradine in this movie because he is just so great to listen to. And you're right, just does such a great job with that Tarantino dialogue as well. And
Yeah.
I wish I would love for them to collaborate more. I don't know why they don't or why they haven't paired up more because he is fucking fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, it's unfortunate though. Like he passed away in 2009.
Really? I did not know that. Oh, he was fairly young then. He was
Fairly,
only 66, I think, when this movie was.
Yeah, so he died. He was 72 when he died.
Shit.
And but I mean, it was kind of cool that he had this like moment with this movie. I mean, he got nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor for it, and Uma Thurman got nominated too. You know, I bring this up because I think I brought it up to you when we covered Volume 1, and I was like, hey, like I thought because I thought Uma Thurman was so great. I think I asked you like, do you think she deserved like an Oscar nomination for the performance? Right. And I was wondering like if you felt any differently about her work here, and I guess his work in this too. Like, is there like, would you have been like, is it Oscar worthy material? I guess for them to have possibly been nominated.
If I were to pick one of them, because like, as much as I love Uma Thurman in this role, like to me it doesn't scream Oscar. I'd have to like look and see maybe who the lead actresses were nominated this year, but to me, for sure, I think David Carradine has I think he would have had a great case for a supporting actor Oscar nomination. However, I think them both getting Golden Globe noms is like enough that I feel satisfied that their work is recognized. Because to me, like these I don't know what it is about it, or maybe I'm just completely out to lunch, but they do feel like some of Tarantino's like less Oscar baity sort of movies, and I feel like it's just because like it's him just showcasing so many different things that he's not really like going for the awards in these movies, and they don't feel like they're coming across that way. Even like his screenplay to me doesn't seem like Oscar worthy to me. And that's not to say, that's the highest praise I could give. I don't feel like it's bad by not being Oscar worthy, and that's just my opinion. But I think he has far better screenplays too. But if you were to give this, because I know it got no Oscar nominations at all, but if it were to get one, my pick would be for David Carradine's supporting performance, hands down. I think he's like the star of the show.
Yeah, but I will say to her credit as well. I mean, they're on equal footing in that scene particularly.
Yeah,
like
they don't work without each other.
Yeah, this is like it's like watching a tennis match, watching them just go back and forth. Exactly. And I think that works because she has to be on equal footing with him. Like she has to kind of convey this kind of strength too, because and that's what he loves about her so much too. Like there's a lot of he respects her like tenacity and her will to like live and kind of get what she feels like she deserves. Like it's a thing that he's like kind of running away from. Like I don't want her to like catch me and get her retribution. It's also the thing that he respects about her too. It's like that on top of it. So it's like it's a really, I mean, they work together, I guess. But I do remember being kind of surprised. And like I guess I do agree with you. It's not really like neither one of these movies were very Oscar baity, and it's gonna be weird to say this because I don't want to dumb it down by saying like I feel like Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2, at least at this point in his career, felt like his more kind of like popcorn kind of entertainment movies rather than and that is not to say that like like his popcorn entertainment movie is much better than like your typical like popcorn entertainment movie, but that's what it felt more like mainstream out of the stuff he had done up to that point, I guess.
Absolutely, I agree.
And I do know some of my friends included, even though they liked Volume 2, there was some disappointment with how different it is from Volume 1. Like like Volume 1 plays like a kind of like homage like martial arts films. There's a lot more action in it. Like you said earlier, this is more like a spaghetti western, more dialogue driven, less action. And I know that some people were disappointed with that. Like I think they wanted more of what they got in Volume 1, and that was never his intention with Volume 2 though. I mean, it was always probably intended just to be the way it is as far as like how things transpire. It wasn't supposed to be like this, his set piece for like action and stuff. Like he showed what he could do as a director with Volume 1. That's what he wanted Volume 1 to be. That it was going to be like this kind of grand, like him getting to do these like big epic action sequences. And this one wasn't, I think, ever intended to be that. It was always supposed to be this. Agree. And I guess when it comes down to it, it's like I guess it's more of like a personal taste. If you like you said, you prefer more of the action in Volume 1 compared to like what we get here. I mean, but it is interesting that for this rewatch of it, you kind of came out of it like a little not as, I guess, excited as you thought you would be. I guess like,
exactly.
Looking back at it again.
Maybe it's because so much time had gone between, and I've seen so many of his more recent films so many more times, even just in between watches of Volume 2. And maybe it'll age a little bit better for me when I inevitably watch it again in the future, because I'm sure I'll watch all of his movies again several times. But that begs a question too, the one I've been really waiting to talk about. I want to know where this one ranks in your Tarantino filmography. And again, that is to say, wherever it is, there's nothing that he has made that I've seen that I do not thoroughly love.
Never made a bad movie.
No, never made a bad movie.
One of those rare directors that has it. Oh Jesus! Oh, well, you know what? What's interesting is I'm in the minority. I'm probably gonna get like a lot of complaints about this. I love Pulp Fiction, right? But I have always preferred Jackie Brown over Pulp Fiction, and I know I'm in like the deep minority on that. But I've always gotten more like entertainment value out of Jackie Brown.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know people have like issues with that movie, not issues per se, but it is the only thing that he's done that's like based on someone else's work. Like it's an Elmore Leonard novel, so it's not like something that he came up with.
Yeah.
But that being said, out of his movies, it's probably going to be kind of mid. Let me see it. I'm pulling it up just in case. I don't want to.
I'm on his IMDb page right now as well.
Yeah, I don't want to forget one and be like, oh, well, no, I should have gone with that.
Right.
I did say I liked. My mind could change tomorrow, guys. I did like.
That's the
just
thing too.
coming off this watch. I felt like I liked again this movie more than Volume 1. Right, I said that earlier. Just as a total like film experience. Now that being said, if I popped in Volume, even though we just kind of covered it, it's been a few months since we covered it. I could probably pop in Volume 1 now. I'm like, oh, maybe I don't, but so I think if I were like, I'm just thinking about. So I love Jackie Brown. I would probably put Pulp Fiction second. Inglourious Bastards, Django. Volume 2 would be in the middle. I guess like so 5.
Okay.
And
damn, that means Hollywood is low. Second half.
No, I know. Well, here's the deal. Like I loved that movie when I saw it, but I also haven't watched it in a while either.
Oh man.
Now I really need to, because I have so many friends who have rewatched it and they think less of it now after rewatching it. Like they loved it when they all saw it. They all loved it when they all saw it in theaters. They're like, oh, this is so good, so good. And then I guess like they just got really nitpicky about little things in it.
That's a top 3 Tarantino for me. It consistently ranks among the highest for me. I love Hollywood.
I can tell from your tone. You're like, oh wow, that means that Hollywood is low.
Yeah, but hey, no judgment.
What about for you? I mean, I feel like this might be for you on the lower half of his.
And again, I love all his work, so it's really, again, I'm the same way. A lot of my ranking of him could change overnight, but I think I would put it at the bottom of my Tarantino list.
Like last
place, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
I know the negative connotation that it brings, but it's not like that. It's not that I don't like the movie. It's just I think I just like it the least of all of his work. But yeah, it's and then I think I would have, and I like Jackie Brown a lot too, but it's one of his movies I've seen the least, and so it would be like right below Jackie Brown. I'd have Jackie Brown probably in 8th spot. Yeah, and then so many of his I could like literally just swap out with each other, like Hollywood, Inglourious Basterds, and Pulp Fiction. It's like I don't know, man. I like them all almost equally. Reservoir Dogs too.
It's hard. It's hard for
The
me to
guy's
like
such
picture.
a great filmmaker, man.
I know it's hard. It's hard for me to like picture Jackie Brown so low on the list, like just chilling in 8th place. But yeah, I mean, but like you said, you can't really go wrong with
exactly
stuff. That's all pretty good. I actually am due for a rewatch of The Hateful Eight. I know you like that movie.
I like the movie a lot,
quite a bit. I haven't watched that in a long time either. I think
boy.
I think that is one of his movies I've actually seen the least of all of his.
Okay, it's a lengthy one too. That movie's like pushing 3 hours.
Yeah, it's I do remember it being long. Yeah,
248. Yeah. So look at a 68 Metascore, which the movie's always been like I think better than it was reviewed. And I have a huge laminated poster of The Hateful Eight too, and it's just super awesome. One of my favorite shot Tarantino movies. Like the cinematography is fantastic. Yeah, we'll eat that up. That would definitely be one I'd like to cover next year.
Definitely. I would be remiss not to bring up, like, I guess visually, I would assume that from a visual standpoint, you prefer the look of Volume 1 over the visual look of Volume 2.
Actually, yeah, like clear winner for me, Volume 1. I don't think there were really any like shots that stood out to me from Volume 2. Maybe there is a great shot actually where Bud is kind of like walking towards this trailer, and like before he gets into it, he kind of just turns and looks at the hills in the darkness. That's a pretty cool shot. I like that. And then there's one too of it's just like a random, like a desert kind of at dusk shot. I don't even know what is going on when the shot happens, but it's a cool view of like the Texas desert at night. Pretty cool. But I think there's like just a few shots that come to mind from Volume 1, or like of course the fight with the Crazy 88s and like the blue background with the silhouettes of them fighting. Like her in her yellow jumpsuit on the motorcycle. The whole with Oren Ishii out in the night sky with the snow falling. Like there are so many incredible shots. That movie has a fantastic.
It's definitely like more like flashy than this one. And not to say that there aren't this is still like a good looking movie, but like
absolutely.
But Volume 1 is definitely flashier, and it seems like he's utilizing more like cinematic tricks visually in Volume 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you mentioned earlier, I do love the shot of the assassins coming in on the chapel where the rehearsal thing is.
That is a good shot.
I love that shot. But yeah, I with you. I actually prefer the look of Volume 1, but I guess it is still kind of cool that like he was able to like do something that was so tonally different from Volume 1. Like it really does feel like it's like it feels like a legitimate, like, even though this is also one movie, it feels like it could be like a sequel, like just detached from like what happens in the first one. Like it doesn't even feel like it's in the same, like it doesn't really feel like it has like the same DNA like at all.
No, it really doesn't. Like a distant cousin.
Yeah. Right. And I'm just gonna like pulling up some other stuff. Actually, yes, Kill Bill Volume 2 has an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was actually need to pull up Volume 1. I wonder what that has, if people liked it more. Critics at least. Let's see. It has 85%, so not that much.
Oh, okay.
85%.
Pretty much like tied almost, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it seems like they just we're like, yep, it's just as good as the first one. And yes, it opened on April 16th, 2004. It grossed 152.2 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. So it definitely made some money.
100%.
And it did refute it. I think it's interesting. It got a B+ cinema score, so that means that people probably wanted more action and like Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars out of 4.
Okay.
He said, put the 2 parts together, and Tarantino has made a masterful saga that celebrates the martial arts genre while kidding it, loving it, and transcending it. This is all one film now. And how we see it as a whole is greater than its two parts. And in 2009, he named Kill Bill Volume 2 one of the 20 best films of the decade.
Wow.
So Roger,
okay, that's pretty
really,
high praise, I guess so.
Like, he really loved it. It would be interesting to watch this like back to back. I don't think I've ever done it.
I never have either.
And I wonder how that would, I know like they've like have the whole Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair. There's been like screenings of it where they show it as one. One movie.
Go watch that in theaters for sure.
I definitely would, and I wonder like how it would flow, like if like just watching them separately too, just back to back. I'm surprised I've never done it. It'd be
I know, me too.
Long,
that's an experiment for sure.
Yeah, it would be a very long exercise, but it would. I mean, I even though you still remember things about Volume 1, that it does feel like by the time this ends, at least there's like a full cohesive, like proper end to the story, and it does feel like you watch this one epic saga, and like she gets to be happy in the end. She gets her daughter. Like that's what you want for that character after seeing her go through all of this stuff to kind of to get to where she finally is by the end of it. I do think it's a satisfying conclusion for that character, though. I will say
I agree. Yeah.
I think it's handled really well.
Let me ask you this. So I know you just said it's a satisfying conclusion for the character, which just brings to mind this infamous question that people have been pondering for years now, and Tarantino himself has sort of alluded to it. But what do you think about the prospects of a Kill Bill Volume 3 featuring Vivica Fox's character's daughter coming after the bride? What do you think about that as a potential Tarantino movie?
I think there is. I mean, I guess at this point he's probably not going to do it because, like, he's
claims to retiring.
He's tapping out at a certain number of movies.
I think there's potential on that still.
I think there's potential there. A lot of people have fan cast that. A lot of people they say they would love Zendaya to play her.
Ooh,
that would be kind of cool, I guess. Be a really good different role for her too.
100%.
I think there's potential there because it also would be like a good callback to like what she kind of tells her the daughter after she kills Vanilla Grade. Yeah, like basically like if you're still feeling what she say, like
I don't know what
upset about it.
Yeah.
Like it's not so much that, it's actually more like the words that she uses more interesting than that.
Yeah, it's definitely more obscure. I can't even recall what it is, but I know upset is basically what she's saying.
Right. But basically, like you can fight and come find me, like, and that would be a fun, cool callback. I think there's like story potential there. What do you think?
I think so too. It'd be great. I don't want to see happen what happened with there's another great potential for a sequel to two other Tarantino movies. You ever hear about like the Vaga brothers, like what could have been with the characters from Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs being brothers? But then, of course, John Travolta and Michael Madsen just kind of got too old to really do a prequel. I think, while there's still conversation about it, it would be nice for him to draft something up, even if he doesn't direct it, but still write it and produce and, be attached. I think it'd just be too good not to, have made. Yeah. So I would really, really like to see it. I'm with you though. Like, I don't really think that it's going to happen, but it's fun to think about and chew on. But I think that there's enough legs in the first two movies that I would buy, that sort of story happening. And I think it would warrant a third volume, but you're right. As a two-parter, Volume 1 and 2 do give the bride like a good conclusion to her story. She pretty much exactly sets out, does what she said she's going to do, and gets like the happy ending. So that's always great.
Yeah. The only major curveball she gives is like finding out that her daughter.
That's
exactly.
And that's a good one.
And that's the one, like the one thing she didn't see coming or was expecting. So that's I do love that. That's a genuine shock for her. And it's interesting. All right. So if they did a Volume 3, and that was like the story they were going with, she would have to kill the bride, right? Would that be like? Would that be a satisfying? That would have.
I mean, like if you're gonna make it, that's pretty much what you'd have to do, right? That, or you pitch maybe have like maybe the bride would be like dead and she would have like trained her daughter to be like kind of her replacement or something like that, and then have them duke it out because she's got a daughter. Maybe cast like Uma Thurman's actual daughter, like it's Maya Hawke, right?
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool to see. But I don't know. I think there's a few different things you could do, but who knows?
All the Tarantino projects that could have been Kill Bill Volume 3 is like R-rated Star Trek movie, like all the stuff that we always like, hear.
Yeah, true.
All the stuff that we always like hear about and like never get. We only can just like dream about what they would have been.
Yeah.
Cause like
we still have one more to look forward to at least. I want to actually just while we're talking about it, I want to see where his the Film Critic movie is in production right now. I want to see. I haven't really heard. It's still in pre-production, I guess.
Oh, nice. And I know Brad Pitt's in it, right? There's rumors about Tom Cruise being in it. I know they didn't like confirm it yet, but rumors that he was like hovering around it. Yeah. This also, by the way, Volume 1 and Volume 2, I think I heard that they are getting a 4K release at some point, but they really need one. Because I feel like both Kill Bills could benefit from like pristine 4K, and they would look great. Actually,
I think so too.
In that format, yeah,
that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I would like that. Well, I'm glad that we because when we deep dive this, we mentioned like, hey, like this movie turns 20 during this time. We should like talk about it when it has its anniversary, and we actually did. We kept our word.
Yes, we did.
We discussed it. I do think I kind of thought that like and it's of course like your opinions are your own and everything. I thought you were gonna come out of this more excited, like it was gonna be like, oh, like remember it a little bit more fondly, I guess. But yeah, it is interesting like when you rewatch something like this and you kind of like have like what a view of it before, like you're like, oh, I remember it being like great on this level, and then like and having like kind of nitpick it in a different way when you rewatch it.
Totally. Yeah, I didn't know really what I would think about it. I was excited to watch it and still thinking, I was riding that high from a few months ago from watching Volume 1, but I guess it all depends too on like my mood sometimes. Like anybody watching a movie, like I don't know, I feel like there will be times where I think I watch this in the future and I'll like rate it higher, but yeah, I guess there's so many other Tarantino movies I love more that it just didn't quite scratch that itch. But that's not to say I didn't enjoy watching it. I'm always happy to watch anything that he's made. So glad we got to cover it too. And it's nice, like a fitting bookend to our episode on Volume 1, which should be worth checking out too if you guys are listening to this and haven't seen that. We did cover that. I think it was back in November, but I'm not exactly sure. It might have been October.
Yeah, it wasn't. I believe it was like a deep dive too. We did it on that.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was that that wasn't fun because I hadn't watched that in a long time either when we did it. So that was like a fun revisit on the first one. But I think as a whole, it's like a really cool, nice, cohesive story. And then like again, some really rich, complex characters, particularly Beatrix and Bill. Like they're at least never not interesting. Like they're very like interesting people to watch. Exchange dialogue with. Like they're very there's a lot of layers there, and Tarantino is such an amazing writer that he conveys so much. I mean, a lot of people say that like when you go to film school, they tell you not to make your screenplays too dialogue heavy or too wordy because you have to like move the action along. And I feel like Tarantino is like anti that. Like
exactly.
Like there's always I mean, between him and like Aaron Sorkin's another one who makes like a lot of wordy, but they're all really good writers. So it's like, let them roll. Like it doesn't matter. Like
exactly. They're the exception's not the rule, right?
Right. Oh, and I should also mention, since we talked about how good that fight was, Daryl Hannah and Uma Thurman did win Best Fight at the 2005 MTV Movie Awards. So there's that as well.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And then she had won it the year before. I think it was her and the actress. Who plays Oren Ishii again?
Oh, Lucy Liu.
Lucy Liu. I think they won it before, the year before.
I can pull that up right now.
Might have been Vivica Fox. I'm not sure. But she did. Uma Thurman won both years, and she wasn't present at the award ceremony in 2005 due to her beef. Apparently, she's a real-life beef with Daryl Hannah. They did not like.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, that explains a lot.
exactly. Adds to their feud, makes it that much more believable, right?
I wonder if it like kind of mirrors like like because Uma Thurman is kind of like Tarantino's kind of like muse, and like I wonder if there was like real like
Perhaps
that kind of thing, like art imitating life kind of situation. Yeah, she won best fight. Oh wow, actually, it's the girl the ball thing. I always forget her name.
Yeah. That's right. Go. Yes.
Go. But
that's
Lucy Liu did win best villain at the MTV Movie Awards.
Oh, cool.
And then Uma Thurman won best female performance as well. Well,
nice.
Leave it to MTV to like give them.
I know.
All right, I guess. Is this where we got to
know where we're at now? Yeah, exactly. Do you want to go first?
I'm interested to see where you. No, I'm gonna let you go.
All right. Yeah, my initial thoughts. Like, I want to give it like giving it a passing grade for sure. I guess part of this is just kind of how I felt. Like after seeing it, kind of tied in with how I'd rate it as a movie, and I think it's like a better, narrative than I'm thinking that how do I word this? It is a better conclusion to the 2-part series and as a revenge story than it made me feel watching it. And so I got to give it credit to it is a great story. And for that reason, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5, keeping to that letterbox scoring grade. I have a feeling I know where you're going with this. Definitely higher than me, I can tell. But how high?
It's higher. But I was surprised. I thought you were gonna 3 it for sure.
I was thinking about it was a last minute decision.
You know what? My current feelings, I'm gonna 4.5 it.
No, okay,
that's
because it's about where I thought you'd go. So
yeah, just because like I said, I love the script, I love the dialogue, and I know you said like compared to other Tarantino scripts, it's not as like up to par, like for you. But I mean, I don't know. Just the scenes of like that kind of conclude the film alone. Like I almost feel like I can forgive like, okay, it's a little long here. They could have maybe cut this here. Like once you get to the kind of interaction between them towards the end, I was just so wholly invested that like whatever feelings I had about like, oh, it went a little too long, it could have been shorter. Like I just forgot all those things. I was like, yep, this is why I was all in on this. And I kind of got reminded that watching it. I was like, this is what the payoff to me is worth it. And so like, wholly satisfying.
Good.
And so I'm gonna 4.5 it. I thought you were gonna go with 3, and I thought you were gonna like just make everyone sad listening. So
no, give it that extra point because it is a pretty good. I think a lot of that lends to how much I like Volume 1, and they kind of go hand in hand. So, but still a great movie. I mean, that's probably like I said, would probably be like my lowest ranked Tarantino, and for it to be 3.5, like that's still a great score. So yeah. But all right.
Not too bad.
Without any further ado, I believe it's time for you to sign us off.
Yeah, this has been episode 166, talking about Kill Bill Volume 2 for its anniversary. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad that we were able to keep our word, and we mentioned when we did Volume 1 that we were going to do, or we should do Volume 2, and so we did, and I'm happy that we did. We're kind of in the midway point of April anniversaries. We still have Man on Fire coming your way, and also interesting, which I'm glad that we're doing Man on Fire, and I'm glad because I'll be able to have a different discussion with you about it. One of our co-hosts, Jack, a long time ago, he actually deep dived this a long time ago, early in our run when he was on the show. So it'll be interesting to have like a different discussion like with you about it and see like kind of what comes out of it during that kind of interaction. So I'm excited to cover that one. And then we also have our listeners pick. You guys picked Hellboy. Still surprised. I mean, pleasantly surprised, guys. I thought you guys were gonna mean girl us all day. I was gonna put money on it, but now Hellboy won, and Jackson's excited for that one too because he wants to kind of explore like Guillermo del Toro movies as well. And I think we're just actually happy that you guys. I think the more that we put these polls up, the more that you guys don't pick the one that we're expecting. It's probably exciting for us, I guess.
Absolutely. I like kind of keep us guessing.
keeps us on our toes. And as always, if you like all the stuff that you're hearing, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But you should also find us on the Playlist Studio app, because Playlist is our podcast network, and they are lovely, and they make our jobs here a lot easier, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting. So make sure that you get their app from
Much love, Playlist.
or the Google Play Store. Yes, much love as always. You can also find our episodes on YouTube as well. Like, a lot of them will be posted on a bi-weekly schedule. So basically, we're gonna have they'll just be like maybe groups of 5 at a time that will be uploaded. It takes a while to upload them, because the episodes were about an hour to an hour and a half, and just to get like the compression stuff right, to make sure that they look as good as they can look, it just takes a little bit longer for them to go up there. But we have another way for you to listen if you want the visual. You can actually see our lovely lighting that I copied and stole from Jackson.
You see me blowing my nose all episode if you're watching this on YouTube.
You can see it on YouTube. You can also, we're gonna have like a lot more short form content there as well, just so you can get to know us a little bit more. We're gonna do some fun games. I'm still cutting together the last ones we did, and we're gonna do some more stuff as well that you can also find on our YouTube page. And of course, we will be bringing you the latest in industry news, because there's a lot that happened since we did since we did our last news episode. The movie industry got really interesting, so like we can't wait to cover some of that in our next news episode. But as always, I am Gaius. This is Jackson. Always great to chat movies with you on a Monday. You make Mondays a bit more bearable, my friend. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Likewise, always a pleasure. And I will be seeing you in a few minutes when we chat the last couple of weeks of industry news. So, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.